This is Jason Anderson, Chairman of the Killenly Town Council, and I am calling this regular Town Council meeting to order. It is currently 7 p.m. on July 9th, 2024. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for bringing us here safely. We just ask you to give us your guidance and wisdom so we can make the decisions for what's best for this town, for the residents, for the businesses. And we just ask you to help us all come together, Lord, and just find unity. And we ask these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For roll call purposes, all council members are in attendance. We'll now move on to item 5, adoptions of minutes from previous meetings, and we have none. Item 6 is presentations, proclamations, and declarations, and we have none. Item 7, unfinished business for town meeting action. We have none for that. Item 8, citizen statements and petitions. Ms. Calori, did we have anything submitted?
We had none submitted.
Thank you. At this time.
Could I move item 8 a little bit later on, if someone wants to talk that is not here yet? I don't know if we could move that to item, after item 11, like that.
All right, Mr. Grandelski asked a question. Is there anyone else who would like to do that?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion's been made by Mr. Grandelski, seconded by Ms. George, to move item 8 to after item 11.
My only issue with that, Jason, is that then we will have talked, but the person will have talked. Will we still be able to respond to that person who talked? You know what I mean?
I would entertain a motion to move item 9 to after, 8 and 9 to after item 11, so that way the council will be able to respond to.
Yes, okay, yes.
So I just want to clarify, Ed, you're modifying your motion to 8 and 9, and Patty, you're agreeing to that second? Okay.
Okay.
Just, I'm trying to make sure I got it right in the
Okay.
record.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
That was good to be.
Thank you, Michelle. So right now, the motion is to move items 8 and 9 to after item 11. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So we will now move on to item 10, appointments to boards and commissions, and we have none, so we'll move on to item 11, reports from liaisons. Board of Education liaison, Mr. Naparata. Thank you. Just for reference sake, do you know what the new prices on the lunches, well, the breakfast and the lunch would be with that increase? Okay.
I apologize, I didn't give you the, it was a 25-cent
Yeah.
increase. I think it was somewhere around, I want to say $3.50
Okay.
for lunch, and I think the breakfast was going to end up being up around $2. So I think it wasn't a real
Yeah.
huge increase.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to get it up to around $2.85, but the consensus was that was too much of a jump in one time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Do you have anything further for us?
That's it for this evening.
Okay, thank you for coming.
All right, thanks.
We'll now move on the agenda. Next item is 11B, Borough Council Liaison.
The borough. Sorry about that. When the borough met, there was a vacancy that had been left when Xavier Harrell resigned. His, I believe it was a work conflict. They appointed Scott Clifford to take his spot on the council, as well as the fire commissioner, because Xavier covered both of those positions. Their old boat that they had retired, they were able to sell to a resident from Rhode Island. I think it was like $2,800 they got for the boat. And the big thing is, as we're wrapping up, the town's wrapping up the Reynolds Street area, they're looking to get, working with the town and DPW about an estimate to do the rest of the upper part of Reynolds Street, the sidewalks. They're a little rough. They were rough when I lived there, and that was almost 10 years ago. So they don't go completely all the way up to Gothier Ave. They go about halfway up. But we work with the borough works with the DPW crews to we contract with them rather than finding an outside. So. And other than that, the budget items were all tabled because there was a conflict because of the software they use. Some of it was updated and some of it wasn't, and it had conflicting numbers. So all that will be tabled until September when we meet again. So borough doesn't meet in July and August. So.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from council? Seeing none, we'll now move on the agenda, and we are moving back to item 8. Ms. Clory had stated we didn't have anything submitted. So anyone who would like to make public comment, we ask you to please come up to the podium and state your name and address.
Charlie Hutchins, East Franklin Street. My comments tonight might be a little harsh and might be disagreeable to some. As always, I wish to keep your friendship and acquaintance. In reference to Agenda Item New Business Article 15B, while there may be good reasons for this resolution, and there doesn't seem to be a parliamentary procedure or rule of procedure that prevents it, in my opinion, this resolution is in direct opposition to the Killingly budget, which was adopted by a vote of the citizens a short while ago. The increase from part-time to full-time was denied by the town council for a WPRD employee, Parks and Recreation employee, and our citizens. No matter the perceived need or the method of financing, this budget increase denies the will of the voters. I believe not so much in the cost. 46 grand ain't a whole heck of a lot of money to a $47 million budget. But that is wrong for the council to discuss not on what may be in this resolution, To say the least, I believe that the will of our citizens is more important than the possible will of the council, except in emergency situations. This is not an emergency. Therefore, I suggest that if this resolution is discussed, at the least, that the town council table further discussion and vote on this resolution, table further discussion and vote on this resolution for at least 1 month, and vote on this resolution, if ever, must include a vote or referendum vote for the people and by the people. With all respect to all, the members of the town council, thank you.
Thank you.
Leanne Duquette, Dubay Drive, Killingly. I would like to echo this gentleman's sentiments. When it comes to any government that overrides the will of the people, we set a bad precedent. The people have spoken. Whether it's agreeable or not, there's arguments to be made on either way. I think the fundamental point here is that when the people speak, the government has no right to then overturn the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm reading this for Kevin Martin of 339 Hartford Pike. After viewing the agenda for July 9th, I want you to know how dismayed I am that certain members of our town council deliberately planned to go against the voters of our community and are forcing the rest of the members to reconsider item 15B. The vote was 50 to 10, not to authorize this position. I've heard a few council members say that the number of voters at the town meeting is insignificant, that it's a minuscule number of the amount of taxpayers in the community, and you're correct. However, they were the ones who chose to attend, so in essence, they speak for the rest of us. To blatantly dismiss concerned voters as insignificant is, in my opinion, not only disrespectful, but also tyrannical in nature on the part of whoever chooses to override their votes. I am asking all of you to vote with the people and not against us. Once again, the people who were there, whether it was 3 or 300, represented all of the taxpayers in Killingly. Going against the voters, well, not only insults the taxpayers, but will also lose trust of the very people who appointed each of you. Please consider voting item 10B. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
My name is John LaBelle of 57 Island Road, Dayville, Connecticut. My computer froze up. I know, and so I am not here on time. But I'd like to. The reason I'm here tonight is to seek understanding how issues are prioritized by this council in the town of Killingly. But before I talk about that, I'd like to say that as I observed a number of celebrations of Independence Day on July 4th and the progression of celebrations this past week, I tried to remember how we got here, where we are today. As a result, I did some research on the internet, which follows, and my computer failed to print it out. But it goes back to the establishment of the independence of this country. I wonder how many people during their celebrations remember the sacrifices and efforts made by our forefathers to create and maintain freedoms we have and sometimes take for granted today. I wonder how many of us think about many sacrifices made by those who have suffered and died during the various wars and the conflicts that have taken place ever since the Declaration of Independence was written and adopted. Fast forwarding to the events, political and non-political today, and the upcoming elections, I realize the decisions that people will make this year will have a potential for very long effects on the freedoms that we have and the benefits and entitlements that we have and enjoy and take so much for granted. However, at least we forget, or it is easy to forget, the foresight and vision of various people who created our interstate highway system, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, municipal water and sewer systems, municipal police and fire, state and federal consumer protection, local elected town and city councils such as this August group, and selectmen, state and federal elected representatives, various agencies, the oversight of public safety, construction safety, planning and zoning through the United States, and a national electrical distribution system, how those all got created, especially for individuals such as us, as we, to be able to speak with any of elected officials such as yourselves without retribution or prejudice, etc. There are many more not mentioned, however, I think I've made my point. So in returning to my original thought, I seek to understand the prioritization of issues in Killingly and the issues posted on the agenda of tonight's meeting. I'd like to understand where these activities fit into the budget recently passed and match the plan for community, the master plan. I'd like to understand why there's no mention of the wastewater treatment plant issues on the agenda and how there is a proposal for funding from contingency for various activities that reduce contingencies included from the wastewater treatment plant. I'd like to understand how creating a full-time position from a half-time position does not require the town to post a new full-time position and placing the potential jeopardy of the part-time position. I'd like to understand how anyone having 3 years' knowledge of the wastewater treatment plant, and I understand there are a number, having full capacity, how anyone having 3 years' knowledge, having full capacity for up to 3 years without having a master plan going forward and implementing that master plan. I would like to understand, with the cessation of developer hookups to the wastewater systems, the value of lost revenue and impacts on the mill rate, and tax levies and quantity of potential hookups that are now being denied, or at least has been stated been denied. I'd like to understand what meetings have taken place to discuss these issues that have not been made public in compliance with Freedom of Information laws. And last but not least, why there is no discussion about all the complaints and issues concerning the recent town assessment and a potential audit of that process. And I'd like to thank everyone here for all your hard work and dedication. It's not gone unrecognized, but especially myself, I recognize all the hard work you put into this. And in addition...
You have 1 minute.
Well, thank you. Wow. I made it. In addition, I'd like to reiterate, we passed a town budget that did not include funding for this position that is being asked for. Although I don't know who that person is, I have nothing against that person. However, we passed a town budget. Why are we discussing tonight adding funds to the budget within a month of passing that budget? It seems to me that contingency funds should be held in reserve for true emergencies or undersights in the budgeting planning process. This issue was discussed fairly fairly well during the budget process. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Last call for public comment. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. And we'll move on in the agenda. The next item up is item 9, council and staff comments.
I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda a discussion and possible action in regards to allowing the chairman of the WPCA or his designee to be a part of any and all negotiations involving the WPCA or sewer plant. Just to put it on the agenda, discussion.
All right, so we got a motion to add something to the agenda. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Just so everyone's aware, to add an item to the agenda per Robert's rules, we need 2/3 majority vote to add to the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
So I just, one of the commissioners reached out to me and said they wanted to be, make sure that we were involved. This particular commissioner feels like we should put more pressure on Frito-Lay to have them absorb some of the cost of the extra loading that they give. And I said, well, why don't you sit in on it? So that's basically it. I think they should be involved in everything. I don't know in terms of exactly, protocol or whatever, but, their butts are on the line, so they should really know every single thing. They should be there and be able to make suggestions, in my opinion, or even if they just have firsthand, whatever.
Sure, and as Michelle did reach out to me with regards to this, and just so I can, shed some light on process for negotiating process. Typically, what we would do, and we've already reached out to the chairperson of the WPCA with the existing contract. We ask all of the commission members, it'll be on their next agenda. Here's a copy of it. Tell us what feedback you may have. Largely, these contracts are negotiated via lobs back and forth in email. It is not a sit down around the table. It's very different than like a union negotiation where everybody sits around the table and we kind of go back and forth. These negotiations are done largely by, we send our draft over to their legal, through our legal team to their legal team. They eventually respond to our legal team, who shares it to us, which we then share to the commission. Right, and so that's pretty much how that communication happens. So as we get a response from the Fritos or any contract, their legal team, we share that with the commission to say this is what their response was and verify how our response is going back. Unless it's clear that they've given us directives, like we are not going to accept anything. We're not going to waste the commission's time if we know it's an adamant. They clearly have not come to the baseline recommendations by the WPCA. We would push back on them, which, this all takes time, but that's really how it works. So the commission members are fully involved in the process. But, again, we have no issues. It's just that's what our normal process is. I will say this, and I can understand the commission members that brought this to the commission member that brought this to you, the angst around this. This document was a 21-year agreement. So the current commission members were not the ones that negotiated this, and they've not been part of that level of a negotiation process before. So this is a new process for them. And I can understand their desire for that assurity, that they will be kept informed of that entire process, but that's the process that we would do as a standard protocol.
So this commissioner expressed that he wanted a motion on the floor to make sure that happens. if you're in agreement, I don't see any problem with the motion. I'll make the motion and people can voice however they feel. I would like to make a motion that from this day forward, the town manager allow the chairman or his designee to be allowed, the chairman of the WPCA, to be allowed to participate in any and all negotiations involving the WPCA or sewer plant.
So we have a motion on the floor. And there's a second. I will open up for discussion on the motion. Mr. Grandelsky.
I guess a lot of this revolves around the two draft letters that are in the manager's report. And now we're sort of in dire straits. You know, we're telling potentially no more connections, no more hookups. What does that do to us in the economic sector? One of the goals of the council was encourage economic development, and this is a major.
So with regards to that, as I relayed in my manager's report, the WPCA has not finalized those. Those are still in draft. Our attorney will be attending their meeting next week to fully discuss those and, you know, what that potential impact may be and what they might consider. The WPCA is still evaluating those. So nothing has been released. We're not communicating to. The only communication that we're sending to developers at this moment is just as a professional courtesy that our capacity study has come back, that we are significantly close to capacity, and that further developments planning is at their own risk, right? We don't know that, we can't assure them or guarantee them connection at this point in time. So that's the communication that's going right now, and that's just as a professional courtesy. We're not issuing formal denials to anybody at this point in time. But the WPCA does need to take all of that into consideration. Again, with the negotiation of the Frito-Lay contract, that is a very hefty contract, and understandably has very significant impact to their operations and the revenue associated and overall to all of the users. You know, we would have the commission, the authority members, well informed of that entire negotiation process. So, you know, there's no issue with having the chairperson or a designee, because we will be essentially providing all that information in executive sessions to the authority members as we progress through that. Very similar to how I update you on a regular basis when we go through negotiating processes. We've done that pretty regularly. So that's what we would do. The only caveat that I would say is that the only other component that I think is a little different is when it comes to the personnel portion, as far as, and this would only apply to the director position. That is a human resource process, and there's a high confidentiality requirement around that. So, you know, again, I don't have a problem with having the chairman or a designee part of a process, but, you know, we have to recognize that that individual doesn't have the authority to speak completely on behalf of the authority. They are one member of the authority. They are not the authority, right? And so they have to make sure they understand what authority level they actually have, what ability to impact that process without the collective discussion of the full board members that actually make the decision, there's a difference. And I would really say I would limit it to the chair, because typically in the past, like Jerry Sinkmeyer was very integral in a lot of those negotiations, Brooklyn's negotiation, Frito-Lay's negotiation. Jerry was the chairman at the time, and it really fell to him as the chairman to participate in those and stay very closely involved in those processes. And that limits your scope of, how many people are being, especially when it comes to a personnel matter. But I would recommend the chair, but I understand that sometimes the chair can't always be there.
So two things. On the designee, I believe the person was thinking about if they came across somebody very, for instance, if Don Aubrey hadn't been on the commission, somebody like that, that might be a designee, somebody who had a ton of information that they might say, Mary, would you mind if this person? So that's what they were thinking, designee. Hearing that, Jason Anderson, do you think I have to rework my motion language-wise for the personnel aspect of it?
Do you have it written down what the motion was?
Yes.
Because I only have jotted notes of it.
The motion is, I'd like to make a motion that from this day forward, the town manager allow the chairman of the WPCA or his designee be allowed to participate in any and all negotiations involving the WPCA or sewer plant, should we say, except for...
I would just say contract negotiations.
Contract negotiation.
Just put the word
I'm okay with
contract before all, put and all contract negotiations, and that encompasses Brooklyn and Frito and any other potential contract that may.
So I have to remove, and then they have to second, and then I have to do it, or just amend?
You can make an amendment to your initial motion, and then Mr. Whitehead can agree to the amendment, and then we can...
Okay, I'd like to amend the motion on the floor to just say, add the word contract negotiations.
Thank you. Okay. So the motion has been amended by Ms. Murphy, seconded by Mr. Whitehead. Any further discussion?
Well,
Mr.
there's
Grandelsky.
also, the letters, because they're in the agenda, they're sort of public knowledge type of thing. And a few people were wondering about that, they say, well, is that what you meant when you talked about moving the Little League field? Then all of a sudden it started dawning on them that the Little League field has to move. If this isn't, as far as the Little League field, WPCA has nothing involved with that, but we do. So somewhere, if nothing else happens, we got to make sure that the Little League field gets moved. I don't know how far along we are with we have a final topo of the gravel operation over there, or if we have a final layout. I think we've got to determine that in not too distant future, because I don't want to be on the side of holding up something of that nature. But that's definitely in the town council ballpark.
That's something as a council we can address on another agenda meeting. The thing I look at as far as that is, we do have some time, but I don't want to wait too long. As you said, I would never want to hold
That's
up
kind
that
of-
project,
right.
but we don't have to take action tonight on that. That's something we
No,
can,
that's just something that
Yep.
we got to start moving a little more aggressive in that regard.
agree.
And I don't know if there's other ways, even as far as the outreach to our federal legislators with respect to funding, possible funding, where that goes. But then there might be something, if this is a problem, I don't know if WPCA, if we as a council might entertain some seed money to start doing some design work, because we had, I don't know how long it took to get the sewer plant upgrade. We passed a referendum, and it was years before DEP came along.
We did over 20 years of planning.
And that's where I'm looking at this, that I do not want that type of scenario to happen, that I don't know where, so that might be something I might throw out for, if we might be able to help along, because if we're full, we can't bring anybody else in the industrial park or whatever else, so that's gonna be a big problem.
I will say, if you want to talk further about that, we can talk about that in council and staff comments or during town manager's report, since
Yeah,
we're
whatever,
on.
we can move on, yeah,
yeah.
okay.
But let me just ask you this, Jason, and this might be the same type of thing. I'd like to maybe have them come in so we can fully understand the capital plan and where we are and what the,
Yeah, that's something we can
is that a
talk about.
different motion?
That's something we can
Yeah.
talk about during.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right, any further discussion on this? The one thing I would say is it would be similar to when I sit in on the Lake Road negotiations. I am not negotiating on part of the council. I am just making suggestions. What goes on in there, I bring back individually to everyone here, to keep everybody up to speed, so that way you can know what's going on without having to wait till the next meeting and us talking during executive session. So that would, it would be similar to that, where it's just, in a sense, just input and advisory.
And I will say, in that case, we actually are coming into an actual meeting.
Yes, so it's-
This
it's-
is really, literally, here's a draft by an email.
Yeah.
Yep, we got it. We'll get back to you. It may be weeks, it may be a month, and then, hey, do you have have you looked at that yet? They'll finally eventually send us a new red line version. We'll be looking at red line version after red line version in various emails. Nobody comes around a table for these. That's just what it is. The attorneys lob drafts back and forth. We may do a couple of, conference calls, if you will, if we feel that there's a specific item on there that we just can't, manage to articulate fully in an email, or it's really lengthy to discuss in an email. We may jump on a call and be like, okay, just to better educate our attorney on what we're actually looking for, but we don't come around like we are doing with some of that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So now we will continue with item 9, council and staff comments. Ms. Bartlett.
I'd like to respond to the agenda item 15B, authorizing the change of one seasonal park position to full-time parks position. I was also taken aback by that because the people voted against that at the auditorium, 50-10. We're going against the people. We've spoken many times about many of the taxpayers and voters. They don't show up to the meetings. They don't vote. We were told that it's their responsibility to find out when the votes are, when the meetings are. It's announced on Winnie. It's in the Killingly Turnpike Buyer. We have signs that go up. And then when the vote didn't pass, it was said, well, that wasn't a representation of the town's voters. It doesn't matter. What is it? One time it's the people have to find out. Another time, oh, not enough people showed up. The budget failed. The next vote, the budget passed, both budgets passed. Was it 10% of the voters who voted? That's not a representative of all the voters either. But those are the people who showed up to vote. Those are the people who cared about the vote. So all of those people who came to the auditorium to that meeting and voted down to change the seasonal park position to full-time, they made their voice. So we need to go by what the people say. So is this going to set a precedent? So when somebody, counselors don't like how the vote went, they're going to add an agenda item and hope that the counselors override the people? That's wrong. The people voiced what they want, and we need to abide by them. That's why we're here, to go by what the people wanted. So those people in the auditorium voted against this position, and that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
So I'd like to, I've heard everybody. If we're going to shoot down 15B, we should shoot down 15A, because that wasn't included in the budget either. But that's all, this is all part of managing and running the town. We have an extension of the river trail. We have, we get to our reports, I've got a page full of activities that are going on for rec. We have all these people coming into town. There's already been social media posts about, well, why is the bathroom closed and why is the bathroom dirty and this and that, and why didn't the garbage cans get emptied? There are 2 people to do that. And as somebody that has to work every other weekend, there was a time where I actually only had to work every third weekend, and that's a huge, big difference. You know, the reason we have 15A is because we have non-union employees that have chosen not to be part of a union, and in order to keep good employees, we're going to treat them with respect and consideration. Our parks guys are out straight. The Owen Bell Park, after the red, white, and blue, I can't even imagine how much work must have had to been done to clean up after probably 10,000 people that were there. That's, you know, and, you know, yeah, well, we plan that, but that's what you want. You want people coming into Killenly. You want them spending their money. You want them coming in and using our parks. And in order for them to keep wanting to come in here and frequenting our businesses, you've got to be able to keep them up. If they're in disrepair and they're not maintained and the town looks dirty, nobody's going to want to come. It's all part of management, and that's part of the town council's purview, is to make sure the town runs well and is managed.
Thank you.
So I think what we should be doing up here is making informed decisions. And I think what it comes down to, I agree with Ula, you know, it comes down to we shouldn't be overriding. But I think a lot of taxpayers are uninformed as far as what those 2 Parks and Recs guys do, what they are responsible for. And we hear over and over how beautiful our parks are, how they can't get over, like how beautiful Main Street, Davis Park is maintained beautifully. Every event, like you go there the next day, it's like nothing happened the day before. They do an amazing job. And it's only 2 guys and a part-time seasonal. And Mary, I have a question for you. So in the winter, when there's only 2 of them and we have a big storm or whatever, we pull from the highway department, correct?
So yes, when there is a large storm, our Parks Department is responsible for clearing all of the parks, all of the parking lots for town buildings, sidewalks, making all of the town buildings accessible. As well as if we get over a certain number of inches, they're also the ones that are plowing the sidewalks itself in accordance with our ordinance. So there are many times, you know, depending on the level of storm, that highway staff, whether it may even be the director or the assistant director, that assists the parks staff in order to be able to, you know, meet those and achieve those goals.
And would that be highway department, and I'm not sure, I haven't looked at salaries, but I'm assuming, do the highway department guys come in higher, or are they paid overtime when they come in to help out?
Oh,
with-
they're
to
paid
cover for
overtime, but
Parks
all
and
of that
Rec?
overtime goes into the storm
Okay.
accounts. Same with when Parks comes in for storms, it goes as storm.
So is it safe to say if we had an additional full-time person who also works for Parks and Rec during the winter, we'd be saving on the overtime, or no?
You wouldn't necessarily save on the overtime. You would still have a level of overtime. You would probably, that position would be paid less than our
Than the highway
DPW staff
department.
by a small amount.
Okay.
So it wouldn't really have much of a difference or that much of an impact as far as saving on overtime that is charged to storm maintenance. But it would alleviate that additional highway staff to be able to, especially if it's the director and the assistant director, to you know, be checking on sections and helping with more problematic areas and things like that. That currently right now, you know, we've also had to, you know, have our fire during certain storms, our fire marshal and another staff member will get in the plows, and they will plow, and they've done sidewalks as well too.
The other thing is just in general morale. So we have 2 guys every other weekend switching off. And I actually reached out because I try to make informed decisions. And I actually reached out and asked Bruno to send me, Bruno Doobie, what are all their responsibilities? And I got a 6-page, and unfortunately I had problems like Mr. LaBelle, I couldn't print anything. And I didn't want to run into a FOIA issue, so I emailed, right before the meeting, I sent Ed and I sent Tony those pages. And when I get home tonight, I'll send the rest of you guys those pages. But I think they potentially could be at a burnout situation from talking to other people who work with them, and they weren't complaining or anything, I'm not saying that. But overall, we're very impressed with the job that they do. But you can only be responsible for so much, and then now we have the River Trail, and now we have Westfield Avenue, and my understanding is they're responsible for all of that, and all that entails, correct?
They will once the community center is located at Westfield. So
Right.
we currently do not service the Westfield Avenue except for the tennis courts.
Right.
The tennis courts have already been turned over to the town. That got turned over a couple of years ago. We've been servicing the tennis courts. But the other fields and the rest of that property will become our Parks Department's, purview. So in next year, 2025,
Yep.
The summer of 2025 will be likely when we take over that for, which, that's been a conversation that I've been saying through the budget process for a while, that once we get to that phase, during the plowing season, we will definitely need to have an additional person because we'll be taking on the plowing of that entire.
Right.
And not just plowing, but salting, clearing any sidewalks. It's a large property to manage.
Now, the other thing, I was told, just through conversation, if you could explain, once that's all done, I believe there's 3 bays or something for equipment, but the town's not gonna have one of those, so they'll still be trailering all the, equipment
Westfield
around,
Avenue.
which takes time too.
Yeah, so for Westfield Avenue, there is not a location at Westfield Avenue for any of our maintenance equipment. We're still kind of working through that with the Board of Education. The Board of Education houses a lot of their equipment for all of their facilities at Westfield Avenue because they don't have maintenance bays or garage bays elsewhere in order to be able to house their equipment. So, yes, our Parks and Rec staff will likely be trailering, various equipment to that site in order to be able to maintain it throughout the year,
So,
as they do with the other sites that they have to trailer to.
and I know we talked about contingency, but as Tammy and I were discussing today, we know, and I had a conversation with Ed, because I like full disclosure, we did talk about the NIPS revenue. Now, how much money have we collected in cleanup for NIPS revenue, which is aligned with what Parks and Rec does?
Yeah, so for the NIPS, we had at the end of this last fiscal year, 120,000, based on the revenues that we have projected and minusing the expense that we had already allocated to that for sweeper costs. We're projected to have a balance available in that fund of a little over 161,000.
Which would more than cover $45,000.
Sure, and we are, clearly that's a quarterly payment that we're receiving, and that's based on, obviously, NIP sales within within the town of Killingly, so we've been having pretty steady revenue for that. And it would meet I was asked whether or not that would meet the eligibility requirements for the NIPS fund, and it would, because they are cleaning up and cleaning like the River Trail, Cat Hollow, spaces that are near waterways or that could prevent trash from entering our waterways and streams or stormwater systems. Very similar to how we're able to also charge the sweeper costs to that fund.
Thank you.
How does the hiring process for that work? Does the part-time person automatically
So-
move into the
yeah.
full-time position, or does this job have to be posted? We have to close the half-time
So-
position? How
I,
is that?
no, he's fine. I will, so I will say, Chairman, I don't know, I know we're in staff and council member comments. I don't
A
know
lot
how
of
much
this
of this
can
you want to
be
do
brought
under
in
the actual
15
item
minutes.
versus
Yeah.
in council member comments, because a lot of this is deliberation on the item.
Yeah.
I'll more than gladly go through that process, but I just wonder whether or not you want to get to the actual item before you get through
Mr. Chair,
that.
I make a motion that we move this to item 15B, our discussion.
I just wanted to have an opportunity to respond to some of the comments. I know there are others who haven't
I
responded
have
as well.
comment on something
So
else
I
too,
would-
so I don't want to miss
I
that.
would
Yeah,
not
right.
want to cut everybody short.
okay.
So, Ms. Murphy, if you want to go.
My comment is I'd like to make a motion that we bring in the wastewater commission and Dave Cappucciano and, sorry, the name, and Jen Hawkins, and then we can pick their brain and find out where we really are.
I can also, just as I can also look to see what their schedule was for coming in. I think they're probably pretty close to their timing of when they would come in anyway. We could just
Yeah.
set that as part of
Yeah,
your
we-
special
we- Yeah,
meeting.
we don't even need a
You
motion
don't need to do
that. That's
a
something
a motion
that-
for
yeah.
that. We could get that in there.
That's something I'll take care of.
I have a fish question. So dredging the pond over at the Owen Bell, I have a few people that are anglers that suggested that they don't believe, I guess they heard you say that the fish are just gonna migrate across the
Mr. Whitehead,
pond. What?
that actually wasn't brought up during the public comment period, so that my recommendation would be wait until we get to the manager's report, because that's in the manager's report.
Oh, it is?
So we can discuss the dredging during that.
They just wanted to have a fishing thing, so, okay. Yeah.
If they were here and said it, then.
I'll
yep.
reserve my comments.
Okay, yeah, you can
I'll
definitely bring it
reserve
up
my
at that
comments for
point.
the 15B until we get there.
Okay. I just want to address some of the things that were brought up to me prior to the meeting, some of the things that were brought up tonight. I was questioned as to why I would even put this on the agenda. My response was per Robert's rules, and per town charter, if 3 council members request an item to be added to the agenda in writing, then I am required to. Ms. George had emailed me and requested it. I had 2 other council members tell me they wanted it on there as well, so that's why this item ended up on the agenda. As far as the other questions that I got, as far as can we even legally do this, does this have to go back to town meeting? I did have a conversation with the town attorney regarding this. I did some research myself, looking up state statutes. There is state statute, one of the state statutes that have been pointed out to me, and I reviewed it. It talked about expenditures over $20,000 having to go to annual town meeting. My conversation with Mr. Roberts, our town attorney, was that only applies to if we had a Board of Finance, because that whole section is for Board of Finance.
If you have a Board of Finance and you are a non-charter town.
Yes. Yep,
So
that
if you
was-
didn't have a charter and you had a Board of Finance, that section, I apologize, but that section of the state statute is specifically written on how they manage. So they aren't operating with a charter and they have a Board of Finance.
So he said, Mr. Roberts had told me that per our town charter, that's where the authority comes from. So our conversation was this afternoon. I got home tonight, I did a bunch of digging, and went through the charter. The concern I have is the charter refers back to chapters 108 and chapters 111 in the Connecticut's general statute. Chapter 108 discusses the establishment of CNR accounts, reserve accounts. Chapter 111 refers to auditing. So neither of those chapters talk about giving us the authority to make, as this can be called, a supplemental appropriation. But in the town charter, it does reference, I will pull it up so I can read it off. And this is Chapter 10 of the town charter. Section 105, towards the end of the paragraph, for the purposes of chapters 108 and 111 of the general statutes as amended, the council shall be deemed to be the budget-making authority and the legislative body of the town and shall have all powers conferred in said chapters. As I said, those two chapters only talk about CNR accounts and talk about auditing and the auditing process. So our charter is referencing two chapters in the state general statute that don't give us the authority to do this. The other piece it does talk about in here, it talks about in section 106, duties of the council and other financial matters. So basically that section 105 was duties of the council on the budget. That paragraph, that section doesn't get into any further appropriations other than what comes out of town meeting. Section 106, duty of the council on other financial matters. It says, in addition to the duties described in 105, 109, 112, and 103 of this chapter, the council shall have the power by ordinance to make appropriations supplemental to those provided in the annual budget not to exceed 1% of the immediate prior year's town operating budget, excluding public school education for any specific purpose. The council shall also have the power by ordinance to incur indebtedness not to exceed 0.5% of the immediate prior year's operating budget, excluding public school education for any specific purpose, in order to finance said supplement appropriations provided for in this section. I then started digging through the ordinances tonight, and I couldn't find anything in our ordinances that authorizes the council to do this. The only thing I found in a charter, there was something in a charter that referred to, trying to find where it is. It talked about, section 109 talked about emergency appropriations, which this doesn't qualify for. It's not an emergency appropriation.
If I may, sir, this is not deemed a supplemental appropriation. The request that was submitted is for a transfer from contingency. So under charter, under section 1012, expenditures and accounting,
I was getting there.
the council has the authority to make transfers by resolution.
Yes, upon the request of the manager, not upon the request of a council member. So this request.
Again, I'm just saying
came-
the council has the
That's-
request.
That was the next
Has the
piece I was
ability.
coming to. So this request was made to me, not by the town manager to add it to the agenda. This request was made by council members. Per our town charter, that is, we're not authorized to do this in this process. Had this come from the town manager to me, or to the council as a recommendation, the charter gives us that authority. I have been unable to find anything in the ordinances or the charter that allows this process to go the way it's been brought forward. So that's, maybe I've missed something in the ordinances, but I dug through as much as I could before tonight's meeting, and I couldn't find anything in the ordinances that actually allows this.
Why wouldn't this go in front of the personnel subcommittee?
When, per Robert's rules, when 3 council members request that I put something on the agenda, I have to put it on the agenda. I did as I'm bound to do by Robert's rules.
And just because something is on your agenda doesn't mean that ultimately the council doesn't refer it back to one of your subcommittees. That's always an option of the council, is to take an item that may have been put on an agenda and refer it back to personnel, fiscal, whatever appropriate subcommittee for consideration. But, that's always an option that the council has, as well as many other options, but.
So we would have to table the motion or just?
You would make a motion to refer the item to whatever appropriate subcommittee you felt needed to review it, to make recommendation to the council as a whole.
Or, as you stated, the town manager can make the request? Is that what you said?
That's, unless there's something that I'm missing in ordinance or in the charter.
I will
is-
have to review it with our legal team, but I will say that, transfers from contingency, it has not been past practice that it matters necessarily if it's who physically is making the request, whether it's town council or manager. The council has the authority over transferring funds out of the contingency. It is considered an internal transfer to the operating budget. It is not considered supplemental appropriation, which is why those other sections of the charters doesn't apply to them, because it's not a supplemental appropriation. It is simply a transfer mechanism. As the town manager, I have full expenditure authority over the budget, unless, I feel that a certain section is, we're running into an issue with a certain section, then it actually limits my authority. That section of the charter limits my authority, where I have to come and request a transfer versus just having the authority to move from contingency or from another department to whatever department. I'm not allowed to do internal transfers. I have to bring that to the council. So it's a limiting authority to my position, but it doesn't exclude the authority of the council, because the council has ultimate authority
Right.
to move, to transfer within the operating budget, without having to do the supplemental appropriation process. But again, and this can all go through that item when you get to deliberations, but
Well, given that, I think maybe we should table this till next month, because there's a lot of, I don't think we all know exactly where we're going. I think, I didn't read the charter, so, and I think if you're bringing this.
Don't move to vote, anybody, because I didn't get to
you haven't
talk.
even gotten to the item yet.
But I'm just saying, if we're
Yeah.
not going to get to speak, I'm holding
Yeah.
my comment till the thing, but
Yeah.
if we're not going to get to, I want to make sure I get my comment in.
Yeah, so separate from this item, there was one other thing I wanted to bring up that got brought up. Ms. Wakefield referred to item 15A and had mentioned that it should be shot down because that wasn't in the budget. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Gloria, but that is something you had budgeted for.
Yes.
You anticipated the increase for the non-union employees in the budget you presented to us.
So non-union budgetary increases are always accounted for within contingency, and that request is made on an annual basis. It is not reflected within the individual departments until the town council makes the vote on it in resolution after the passage of the budget. So it is budgeted for within contingency every year, and has been for a very long time.
Okay. And was 15?
We also budget for any potential union increases while we're in negotiation within contingency. So if we haven't, like the town hall unit, you just ratified that in June. Clearly, we were through the budgetary process. We had put a placeholder in contingency for a potential for those wages as well. So we understood the value of where we were going to be for contingency, really kind of starting the year based on those two wage adjustments.
And all those items were referred to the town council with suggestion from the personnel subcommittee, correct?
The town hall unit was. The item that's before you tonight was not gone
Right.
through personnel subcommittee simply because of the timing and the fact that I was out for the tail end of June due to a family matter. So that did not go to personnel subcommittee, but I understand that the personnel subcommittee members were okay with having the entire council deliberated on it without having.
You asked us.
We did. I
Correct.
did.
You asked us.
Correct.
That's kind of my point.
Yes.
All the personnel items, negotiations, raises, all went in front of the personnel subcommittee. My question is, why is this not?
Again, it was-
No, I'm not, my question isn't direct to you. My apologies, I was just looking at you. So this should have been,
So just for clarification purposes, so item 15A was budgeted in your contingency.
Correct, it was.
Was item 15B budgeted into contingency?
No, it was not.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask one thing? So Mary, if we have a part-time to full-time position, just normally, is that out of contingency normally, or is that an appropriation?
So normally we would handle that through the budgetary process, and it would be incorporated, and we would reflect it within the actual department. If we were making the request like we did in the original budgetary process, we would reflect that within the budget, explain it through the budgetary process, and request, and make that request, and that would reflect within the department. We would not normally hold that in contingency after, pending the end of the budgetary process.
It would just go into the operating budget,
It would be in the operating budget, but would be in the department in which that,
specific.
right, it would be reflective within the department that it was impacting.
And my last question, so Parks and Rec generates revenue through all their programs and services. How much did Parks and Rec generate last year?
I want to say it's about 130,000 that, and it's largely recreation.
Right.
That does not reflect, so the rentals of the park actually go into the outdoor trust. They do not go into the general fund revenue. They go into the outdoor trust to be able to be utilized for capital outlay for parks. I don't have that number off the top of my head as to how much we received in rental fees for the park usage. The rest of the 130,000 is really program fees. So that's your exercise
plays,
classes and,
right,
yes,
correct.
and all of those other things.
And park rentals, so the Parks and Rec, the two guys we're talking about in halftime, they're responsible for maintaining all that and making sure after parties and rentals, that's put back the way it was, right?
Yeah, so with the park staff, so it's the 2 full-time, and during the summer months, we do have 2 seasonal. They're kind of staggered. So we have one that starts in April, one that starts in July, the one that starts in April ends in September, the one that starts in July ends in November. So we kind of stagger it, but we have essentially 4 on for what we would consider the main growing season or the most active season of our actual parks. But yes, it is, we do have if you rent a pavilion at Owen Bell for a birthday party, there are responsibilities of the renting party that they clean up after themselves, right? So those are largely managed on their own, and they don't have to specifically come in for that cleanup. But when we have large-scale events like, Second Saturdays or, the concerts in the park, 4th of July, Spooktacular, those, they're usually, if not all of them are in, a good faction of them are in, to not just clean up afterwards, but they're in to manage waste and usually restroom facilities throughout the entire event. So, that's just part of managing those events. And we also have highway that comes in to help with traffic. And that's part of putting on a large community event.
All right, so I have a question for you. We brought up Camp Wallaby before. What is the cost of running the camp and the staff, and what is brought in from the tuition?
So I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. Clearly, I didn't have them all memorized. I want to say last time I looked at it, I believe that the revenue from Camp Wallaby covered somewhere around 70 to 80% of the overall cost of Camp Wallaby. But again, I'd have to go back and physically pull out the number. I wasn't prepared for that tonight.
But that doesn't give us
I don't
the
have it off the
actual
top of my
money.
head.
So I have one more. So this will be easy. So the Parks and Rec, they increased their budget this year?
They do.
It doesn't matter how much. I'm just.
Yeah, they have
it's
an
just a
increase to
point.
their budget, but they also have an increase in their revenue too. So
Right.
so when you offset the increase in their revenue, they actually have a decrease to their budget.
So all their revenue, they anticipate as coming in,
Utilizing, yeah.
And they're going to utilize that elsewhere, correct?
It's going to be utilized in programming, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. In response to the comment over whether this is a supplemental appropriation or not, as it was referred to in section 7348, if we didn't have a charter, if we had a board of finance, then this would be considered a supplemental appropriation based on definitions in the statute.
Yep.
So and you can look at all sorts of definitions, and it's, depending on whose definition you're looking at, is whether this is a supplemental appropriation because you're funding it, even though it's a transfer from contingency, it would be getting funded from another source other than originally basically money would be getting used somewhere it wasn't originally designated for. So it's,
Which becomes a new issue because we do have a charter and we don't have the
Yes.
Board of Finance.
yes.
Agreed.
All right, I'm going to just speak because I know what's going to happen. So I want to say that I don't really think those voters were informed. Mary gave a full speech about what that position was about. I think what they were really cared about was their doubling in taxes, and they wanted the cuts. And I don't feel like we really gave even enough cuts. We moved a lot of money around, and this is like one of the only cuts we gave. I spoke to an elderly couple that was there that held their hand up to make this cut, and they wanted me to tell you, it's the DeMaios, if anybody, hopefully they won't be mad at me, but, that they're out there, the residents are, wanted this cut. So personally, I don't care if we had one staff member left. I'm going to represent the people. And I understand other people feel differently, and, there's many people, but, this is what my people told me, and that's what I'm going to do. So I think this is wrong.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments regarding public comment before we move on?
Jason, when you got home and did all your research, was that before you or after you did you talk to Attorney Roberts about what you researched before you got here tonight? So do you have a legal opinion?
On which part?
This spiel you just gave us about the charter and what
The
ifs.
the town attorney
Yeah.
told me that the authority comes from the charter. I don't know where in the charter it comes from, because if you read this and you look at the two chapters that our charter references, Chapter 108, Chapter 111, they are not appropriations. They are CNR, reserve account, is Chapter 108. Chapter 111 is auditing. It's not appropriations. If you go in further, and that's why I tried, that was the one thing that, the one piece I saw that might direct you somewhere else is where it said by ordinance. And I looked, the ordinances take some time to go through. I could not find an ordinance that authorized us to do this. The only thing I saw authorization for was if the town manager had brought this to me and said, as a recommendation, I would have said, all right, we'll send it to personnel. We'll send it to fiscal subcommittee, and then their recommendations come back to the council. So that's that's a process we normally go through.
Correct.
But this, because of how much feedback I got as to why I put this on the agenda, can we legally do this? That's why I reached out to the town attorney to get an opinion. Did I have time to reach out to him between when I stopped looking at these ordinances at about 6:35, 6:40
Well, that was my
in the
question.
meeting?
So you haven't had a legal opinion on what you researched?
The legal opinion I got was that it was in the charter and it was in the charter. And clearly reading the charter, there's nothing in this section 10, chapter 10, finance and taxation, that clearly gives the council the authority to act on this without recommendation from the town manager.
My other question is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the town council is the fiduciary body, correct?
Yes,
Yes. So,
and we are empowered by the charter.
correct.
But find where in the charter where it says we can do this.
Find where it doesn't.
Has this been done before? Has this been done before?
On my time on the council, since I was elected in 2017, we have never had an item that the council put forward to do a fund transfer that wasn't recommended from the town manager. So every other time, and correct me if you know of another time where it hasn't gone that way, every other time it's come from the town manager as a recommendation, and then it goes through the proper channels.
I don't have a legal opinion, but the town people voted, and the town, that's what we're here. That's what we represent. We represent the town people. We don't represent two people. We represent the town people. And a legal opinion is one person. The town voted, and that's what they said, that's what they asked us to do.
Which I agree, but we do need to find out if, we do need to have the answer.
Yeah,
And there's, I respect both sides of the opinion. Sometimes your opinion's gonna be unpopular. I don't find it tyrannal, act of tyranny. I wouldn't go that far. I think it's a, you know, we may look at Parks and Rec as non-essential, but it's one of the nicest parts of our town, so being passionate about it and not being popular for going against what 50 people said, yes, sometimes that you're not gonna be in the best light of the people, but if you think you're making the right decision, I think you go with what you think is the right decision.
To make an educated decision, you need to know what the scope of work is, right? So we don't even know what the scope of work is. We can anticipate the scope of work. We can anticipate that we're not going to be able to cover it. So we're going to hire more people for the taxpayers' money because we anticipate that there's going to be more work. Why can't the town garage pick up some? Why can't everybody pick up some? Everybody else in this whole town has to figure out a way that they need to pay their taxes. Why can't we figure out a way to make things work?
I'm not saying that you can't.
I'm sorry.
No. I think we're going round and round and we don't know what the answer is. And
I just want to say, I just think and I deeply respect you, Tony. I look you in the eye when I say that. I think you're great, but honestly, that was just a terrible thing you just said. We're a home rule town. Which is, that when the people speak, you respect them. I don't care whether it's completely different than what I feel. That's what you do.
in some regard, yes, but as Tammy said, we're also making, you're going to have to sometimes make a decision that's not popular with the people. I mean, it happens all the time. You don't have to be in agreement.
But the people voted against it.
Right.
And
I
so
agree.
it didn't matter how many people voted against it. Those were the people who were there.
What should happen is we go through the winter, we do what we have to do, and then we come out of the winter, and then we make an educated decision saying, we need these people, we need this person, we need that. Maybe we need two people, with the new center opening up. But to go in there ahead of time, we're not making an educated decision, we're making a feel-good decision.
And we're talking about snowstorms. How many snowstorms did we have last year?
Exactly.
One thing that hasn't been brought up, and I don't know, Ms. Gloria, if you have an answer to this, do you know how many man-hours go into maintaining the area where we're going to be dumping the material that's getting dredged? Because I know the soccer field and that track are going to be out of service. So if anything, that's less hours Parks and Rec is going to have to handle in the meantime.
Well, and that'll be over this upcoming winter, will be just for that area. And during the winter, the use, they still maintain the track. We don't really do anything for the field itself, obviously, through the winter time. So there's not as many man hours, and because the vegetation is, pretty far back off of the track in that area, we typically don't find as much, branch and debris that we're trying to clear off the track. The bigger focus is on like Cat Hollow and the River Trail through the winter time, because that's when, lately we've been getting a lot of wind events, which cause a lot of downed trees and washout events that take place. And those are usually happening along our River Trail, Cat Hollow, those areas that typically get higher. The other section of Owen Bell, I will say, the remaining section of Owen Bell is really where the higher man hours is for Owen Bell, regardless, because we still have bathroom facilities that are out there that are still open through some of that time period, and we have people that are using the playground and the skate park and all of that, given that we haven't had a lot of snow. They're usually out there using all of those facilities. So the other side of Owen Bell is typically higher utilization over the winter months.
Thank you.
Mary, we also have a lot of vandalism and things that have to be fixed repeatedly and
We do.
And these guys take care of that too, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And where does that money come from? Contingency?
No, that comes out of the parks budget.
Okay.
Maintenance and repairs or landscaping. It's in their materials budget. Unless it's something really excessive and we have to file an insurance claim,
Okay.
which we have had that.
Yeah, unfortunately. Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll now move on in the agenda. And we are moving on to item 12, discussion and acceptance of monthly budget reports. Can I get a motion to accept the summary report on general funds appropriations for town government?
So moved.
Motion was made by Ms. Wakefield, seconded by Mr. Grandelski. Discussion?
I had a question, Mary. So I was looking at the expenditures, and do we have one more month coming? Is that why we're coming in like under 100%, or is this it?
We still have a number of invoices that are still having to post. So yes, some things still have a month, but the invoice hasn't come in for the month of June yet, so it obviously hasn't been posted yet. So these are still all, these are not final numbers. There are some areas that we won't receive invoices until August.
So next month when we look at this,
So next month you'll be getting July, you won't be getting June.
correct, but it's not going to be like month one, we're going to see the 100% or, no,
so
we
you're
do see the,
You're not gonna,
Yeah.
July,
Yeah.
you won't receive another one of these until we get to final June, June 30th. We won't give you another one in July for June 30th. We give you, in August, we will
yeah,
give
I'm
you the
sorry,
first
I
month
don't
of
even
July.
remember what month it is.
I know,
that looking at the
right?
thing, but-
So this'll be, so when you will get a final report. Once we
Okay.
have full closeouts and everything like that, we still have to do, in September, we do year-end transfers.
Yeah, no, I was just
So all
looking,
that process
wondering
happens, yeah.
where we see
Yeah.
the 100%.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on to item 13B, item 12B, system object based on adjusted budget from the Board of Education. Can I get a motion to accept this?
I'll make that motion.
Motion has been made by Ms. George, seconded by Mr. Gambatista. Discussion, comments, questions?
I had a question, it might be for you. So I saw, and maybe this comes later with the other motion, where they said they were going to use a certain amount of money. Is that going to go away with the new law? Do you know that they have to run things by us? Yeah, that goes away, so we won't even see that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on in the agenda, next item up is 12A, Town Manager's Report. Ms. Gloria, if you could. Or excuse me, 13A. I'm going down.
Yeah, we don't even know what number we're on anymore. Back in 2022, the state developed a new bridge funding program. The previous local bridge program was an 80-20 program, 80% federal, 20% town funds. The new program is 100% federal and state funded. It's also managed entirely by state DOT with local municipal input. We initially submitted for 7 bridges. In March of '23, we got communication from Connecticut DOT saying that they were processing draft commitment letters for 4 of the bridges. We just recently received notification that they are proceeding forward with preliminary design phase for 3 of the bridges, Peep Toad, Wright Road, and Cotton Bridge Road Bridge. I always got to get the second bridge in there. Cotton Bridge Road Bridge. We, as part of our responsibility in this, is to assist them in public notification. So we are, putting out the press release on that, as well as sending out the abutters notifications. So I gave you a copy of the press release. Oh, I thought I gave you a copy of the press release. Those are those. I will provide for you a copy of the press release, as well as a copy of the abutters notification. The engineering department is working through those. And then below is just the estimated timeline right now for design. Again, they are just beginning preliminary. So they're expecting to finalize preliminary design in largely in spring and summer of next year, 2025. Final design they expect to complete sometime in the summer of '26, a year later. Contracting and bidding will go out largely in the fall of 2026, And they expect to be into construction by spring of 2028. Well, finishing construction in 2028. So that's actually really short timeline for the state of Connecticut. The federal bridge program, when it was an 80-20, even when the towns had it funded right up front, it was taking 7 years to get to construction. Forget about finishing construction, just get to construction. So this has actually been this is fairly streamlined, and they're taking 3 bridges on all at the same time. These 3 bridges, I will tell you, Peep Toad has been on our capital improvement plan for over 2 decades. So to see these moving forward is really important. Law enforcement, our law enforcement division did receive they've successfully achieved the Tier 1 accreditation. That state tiered accreditation program was legislatively enacted 2 years ago. They did give resident state trooper towns an additional year to achieve Tier 1 accreditation, simply because I think they needed to learn about what a resident state trooper town actually was. They were trying to apply all the same criteria as state police or an independent municipality police department, which a resident state trooper constabulary program is not. And so we worked very diligently through that. I will say, Buddy Conroy, our public safety administrator, worked very diligently on this. The first pass that we had when they came out and did our field work last July. They were very impressed with the progress that we had made and all the work that he had done. And this is not a simple process. It is volumes and volumes of paperwork and things that you have to cross-reference among many different manuals. And Buddy put in that effort, and so I just want to congratulate him and the rest of the Killingly team, because he didn't do it in a vacuum. He worked with the whole team there in order to make sure that everybody was compliant, make sure everybody understood what compliancy required. So we did get our Tier 1. We will be attending their September 12th post-council meeting in order for us to formally receive that accreditation. We will need to now progress to Tier 2 accreditation.
Yeah, could you explain, what are the consequences, good consequences of Tier 1?
So Tier 1, Tier 1 is the first step where they basically evaluate all of your base processes, everything from incident handling, employee manuals, hiring practices, training practices, ongoing training, certification requirements, uniform requirements, all of those things to make sure that you are actually at a professional level, that you are meeting all of those and that you are doing all of the appropriate training and that you are certifying your staff and that all of your equipment is properly certified and maintained on a required regiment.
So what were we riding on the Troop D's license?
So no, this accreditation process is brand new. The state never had this for there had been and still is, there's a federal level accreditation that some towns and some municipalities in the state had gone through, the ACLEA accreditation. That would be the equivalent of, if you're a professional in your own profession, right? Go to your federal, your international level association, and sometimes they have best budget certification or best operating procedure certification, right? That's what ACLEA does. The state kind of took that model and morphed it to be able to, and required it to apply to all municipalities. The ACLEA accreditation, most, especially small municipalities like ours, small department like ours, we could never achieve ACLEA accreditation. It requires you to have X number of detectives, X number of, right? That's just not applicable in our department. But the Tier 1 accreditation that the state implemented requires a very thorough review of all of your practices. And I mean, absolutely everything. And we couldn't just look at them and say, well, it's in the state manual. We had to show where it was in the state manual. We had to show that all of our guys knew where it was in the state manual and that they implemented that. And that was what they were held accountable for. So it's a very robust, and it has many, many, many sections that they have to walk through on every avenue. So it takes a long time to do. But yes, that's really what it is to assure that we are meeting that first level of accreditation, which we've passed successfully. Some other towns are still trying to work through that process, so we've done very well, and we'll be moving forward. We know what our list is already for Tier 2 accreditation, and so we're, Buddy's already diving into Tier 2 accreditation to move us forward. Cat Hollow, we had some great fun out at Cat Hollow, but I received an email from a resident that goes out and walks Cat Hollow all the time. The first picture is the picture he sent me, and he was like, hey, I see this on your spruce trees out in Cat Hollow. It looks like it's probably something not so great for the trees. Maybe you guys can take a look at it, see what it is. So we did, really go out there and look at it, and it's actually on our hemlocks, which we have a lot of hemlocks through Cat Hollow, and it's a woolly adjuglid. Whatever. I always mispronounce it. It's an aphid. I can pronounce that. It's an aphid that basically sucks the sap out of the tree, and if there's too many of them on the tree, it eventually kills the tree. We have a heavy infestation of that. We're fortunate. Our town engineer is very versed on trees, especially of the evergreen variety. And so he was very in tune with this, very informed about this. We did reach out to several state extension offices to better understand what potential treatment opportunities the town might have. There was one of the things that he noted immediately when he went through there was that he really didn't know any evidence of natural predators for these aphids. So ladybugs are a very natural predator for this, and he really didn't see any in their time that they spent out there. So that was like, I wonder if there's an opportunity there. The other forms of treatment is insecticide application. We would be limited on the potential application of that because we are near water body, and so not all insecticides could be, or all treatments could be utilized in that area. And most of the recommendations around insecticide treatment is that you treat the trees that are not heavily infested, kind of the intermediate ones, and you remove the heavily infested ones so that way they're not reinfecting the ones that you've treated. That would be very invasive to the Cat Hollow area. So we were able to get a hold of a vendor, and we opted to go for the natural route of trying to introduce predators. So we introduced 5,000 lady beetles. They're called saint beetles. These beetles are specific in that they feed on this aphid. They're not drawn to many other food sources, so the likelihood of them leaving this property or leaving that for another food source is shorter, right? It's smaller, but there's always that possibility, but it is a lot smaller. There's plenty of food out there. The natural process of doing this lady beetle will not fully eliminate the aphid that is on this. It brings the population into balance. So there will still be aphids out there. However, it won't be to the detriment of the tree. So the trees won't be dying. And we did find there were a number of trees that were heavily infested and they were already half dead. So we're selective on where we put them, but I did kind of put the pictures of what our little nests looked like that we had to clip into the tree. And we've been trying to communicate to the public, don't touch them, leave them there. We don't, they're there purposefully. We will eventually go back and remove them. They are not litter. The lady beetle is fully grown, is about the size of a sesame seed. And they overwinter, their lifespan is about 2 years. They overwinter and they lay several hundred eggs each. So we're very hopeful that population-wise, that will grow in the upcoming years, and it would also spread to the neighboring parcels that also have hemlocks that are impacted too. So we're going to keep an eye on it and just watch to see what that new growth looks like on those hemlocks in the upcoming seasons. So that we thought was really important. We were able to get Winnie to come down. Tammy's granddaughter participated in our release. Quiet Corner Academy participated in the release. They're a homeschool pod group that supports homeschooling families in the area. They did an entire STEM program over it, and they actually created an entire poster about the aphid, the life cycles, all of that. They could actually pronounce the real name for the St. Beetle. I will never go there. But what they are going to do is they're going to create an outdoor banner or an outdoor poster to be able to put at the Cat Hollow kiosks so people can be educated about it. So they are in the process of doing that. They're hoping to have that to us, sometime in August, maybe the end of August or so we can get that out, which I think is a really great, cool thing that they're doing. So really thankful for Quiet Corner Academy's participation in this.
Are you working with the Ag Commission? I mean, that might be Quiet Corners.
It's not Quiet Corner
No.
Academy. We did, our natural resource officer did participate. However, we weren't able to get the Ag Commission in only because we had such a short time window. The beetles stopped shipping by July 15th because it gets too hot for them to ship. And so we just didn't have enough time. And right now, our Ag Commission members are so stretched with their own farms and stuff. But yes, we want to make sure we bring them in. And also the gardening group that's working out there to do a lot of we'll be working with them as well. But yeah. The wastewater treatment plant capacity analysis, we already kind of discussed that a little bit. I did provide for you the drafts of the letters that are being considered. I know our town attorney, our town attorney that specializes in this area, so Ann Catino, not Rich Roberts, but Ann Catino, will be attending the WPCA meeting next week, the 16th. It's not on Wednesday, it's on Tuesday, or Monday. What's the 16th? Tuesday. They will be on Tuesday. They're doing a special meeting, so that way everybody can attend. So Ann Catino will be there to help kind of talk through the legal ramifications and aspects of this and any questions that the authority members may have as they continue to deliberate on, what is the messaging and what is the approach that they're going to have to take moving forward. So so the letters that you have that I provided for you are simply drafts. I expect that they will change come next week, and I'll provide you updates. Owen Bell dredging, the dredging project is planned to begin likely around, the actual digging is planned to begin around the week of July 29th. You're gonna, probably tomorrow or the next day, we're gonna start seeing dewatering happening. So water is gonna, we're gonna start trying to lower the pond level. If there is an angler group that it has some interest, I have been asked whether or not we want to just open it up to fishing. I want to be cautious around just having like a mob of people out there throwing poles and whatnot out there, right? We don't need to start digging out fish hooks all over the place. But if there is an actual like angler group that has an interest in doing some fishing in there over the next 2 weeks, I'm more than happy to look at having them coordinate something to do that. Because yes, we are going to dig a hole for a deeper end. Some will. There is going to be a lot of fish die off, and we know that. So if they have interest in that and they want to have them reach out to me. Yeah, I'm more than willing to do that. We can't relocate the fish. Relocating fish. So number one, the fish that are in there largely, I'm not going to say all the fish, largely are ones that we purchased, carp that we purchased and put in there. in order to help reduce the amount of grass in the pond, because we were running into significant algae blooms because of that, and that was another reason why we put the aerator in. There are some other random fish that are in there. However they got there, they got there. So, we can definitely talk about that, but our plan was to try and make a deeper end, so some fish may go into there. We largely believe that at the end of this project, we're going to be restocking that pond with an appropriate level of fish for just the ecosystem. The frogs and the turtles, once you start digging in water, frogs and turtles kind of beat feet a little bit more. They can get out of there. Some will likely not make it as well, but largely they'll beat feet. There are other wetter areas on the property that the frogs and the turtles will likely go to. There's a vernal pool not too far from there. So they'll likely start to migrate to those other water areas for the duration of the actual digging. The dredging is slated to take about 6 weeks for the actual dredging. The dewatering, though, so we are looking at trying to use, we're going to have to use a combination of electric and generator-powered pumps in order to bring the water level down, but know that that's going to have to run 24/7, right? We're going to be testing over the next once we start it, we're going to do a few tests to see if there's a way we can shut it off overnight to see how much recharge that pond has overnight. But if we lose too much ground, we'll have to keep them running throughout the entire duration in order for them to be able to just get the project done. So there might be noise out there for a little while, but we're going to try and minimize it as much as we possibly can.
How about for fencing off the area,
Yeah, so
the physical dredging is one thing, but the dewatering is.
Yeah, so we are actually gonna remove, or we're gonna put in temporary construction fencing that is going to essentially block off the public access to the whole soccer field and track area. That whole area will be cut off with temporary fencing. We will have construction fencing that is gonna go around the construction fencing, the orange fencing, will go around the actual dredging site itself. But we will have the 6-foot tall chain link style temporary fencing.
Okay, yeah.
We're gonna have that up with signs posted. So to tell people they have to stay out. We don't want to have people in that area. We had looked at whether or not it would be possible to keep the track open, but with the level of material that's going to be coming out and the amount of heavy equipment that's going to be passing through that area, it's really going to tear up that track area. So it's just not going to be safe. So that's what we're going to be doing. And again, the more they can spread that material out, the faster it will dewater, which means it's the faster they can haul it out of there. And then we can recoup that field a lot quicker.
So
The track will get, a new track will get put
See, most of
down.
that, I assume that way, but I was looking at the dewatering, where do the outlet pipes go? Is that gonna be, hope that's out of a traffic area or within what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really, the dewatering is going to occur on the soccer field. And so there's enough space and enough lower areas that the water will be able to, saturate into the ground. And then that soccer field is going to be so nicely fertilized by the time we're done with this, right? It'll be the greenest soccer field in this side of New England. But it's going to take a while for, we have to rebuild the fields and stuff like that. So yes, that's what we're going to be doing.
I just have two questions on the dredging process. Have we looked to make sure there's no endangered species like spotted salamanders in there?
We have, and we've been cleared.
Okay. Second thing, are we going to be able to make sure that these pumps meet the noise ordinances in town so that any homeowners that are along there aren't being impacted?
That's why we're trying to do the testing, but it is a short-term construction process. And so just like we've done with bridges with dewatering, it is a short-term construction, which our ordinance does allow for short-term construction. And that's, we're trying to not make it, and they're not huge pumps. I mean, they're good size, but they're not, massive. It's not like we're trying to move an ocean, but it is a pretty good sized pond.
Yeah.
So there is a fair amount of water that we have to move out of there. So yes, that's why we're trying to determine whether or not it's something that because also, you know, we don't, you can leave them run overnight, but you know, if it plugs up, nobody's going to be there to catch it while it's plugged up, right? And we don't want to run into an issue with that. So we're just trying to see if there's a possibility. Again, we don't know. We're going to be learning a lot about this pond as we go through this, right? It's never been dredged. So it's essentially, you know, a stormwater recharge. It is, yeah. And, you know, that takes a long time. So our hope is when we're done with this dredging project, like this town doesn't have to touch it for 60 years. And then nobody will remember where any of that pond stuff came from. I won't be here 60 years from now.
You think it's spring fed?
So it's possible that there is some spring fed underneath. However, given what we have seen during drought conditions, if it is spring fed, it's very minimal. We think that a large amount of that water, just from the topography and the kind of the wetlands and how the water flows, it's really coming 395. That area, it's coming from that direction. So, you know, we'll see. And that's what, you know, part of this as we go through the dewatering, and that's why we want to start the dewatering now, because, you know, we want to get it down as low as we possibly can to see how, you know, if we have the opportunity to kind of cut those for periods of time. But, yeah. So that's my report. And then I gave you the list of my meetings that I attended over the past month. And I will just, one other thing, just to let you all know, this month I will be taking some additional time off towards the end of this month. My husband is very fortunate in that he's going to be able to get an implant in his back for back surgery, as opposed to doing full back surgery. But it also means that he's not allowed to bend over for a month. So the first initially, I need to be home because I don't know how you can manage a 5-year-old and a Great Dane puppy without bending over at least once a day. So I will have to attend to him. So his surgery is on the 24th. So I will be at least out. I'm available by phone and by email and text message. Don't send smoke signals. Randy doesn't like that. You know, I may have some limited availability around when I can respond, depending on what conditions he's in at that time. So I just want to give you that heads up that I will be out from the 24th at least through the August 5th, so it's about a week and a half. Again, available to everyone by phone and by email, but I may be a little bit limited. So if you really need me, make the phone ring. Thank you.
Yeah,
We're really excited. He had a test trial last month, and it was amazing. I mean, my husband is a man who hasn't been able to stand up straight without looking like a 747 taking off for takeoff, and need half a room in order to be able to get to a vertical position in at least 8 or 9 years. He had the test implant in, and by day 2, he literally stood up, and the man sat there and did this for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, did you see this? Mm-hmm. Right. Like, it was amazing. It was just amazing. So we're incredibly excited for him to be able to get this done. So it has to stick. It has to heal.
So getting back to the wastewater, the sewer plant, so they're going to have their meeting on Monday, and the attorney's going to be there.
On Tuesday. Tuesday is the 16th.
All right, I got to put,
It's the 16th, not the 15th, because
all right, 16.
we have 15th is Monday.
And is there any, like, we've had interaction with the federal delegation we requested, can we get copies of that so we have an idea what that was?
Sure. I'll get you guys copies of the request that we submitted and the response that we got from, I don't want to say it was Murphy's office. But again, we've gone back and forth with all three offices, but I'll get you the responses that we've gotten from them. And again, I encourage you all to reach out, you know, and make those requests yourselves.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because I think we need to, I think the council, in with the sewer authority members, we have to get out there and look for funds, because that's a huge amount of money. And if somehow we can accelerate the program or get, if someone comes up with a,
And we've been talking to, you know, I know we've been talking to the state as well, Connecticut Deep, as well as DECD, to see if there's a way we can leverage federal and state money. Because again, you know, I've said this straight to the governor in one of our meetings. There's no, you know, our wastewater treatment plants were put in by essentially federal and state funding, largely state funding, you know, in the 70s. Most of this area's wastewater treatment plants were put in at that point in time. These capacity increases that are now much needed are they're too costly for the users of this system to absorb that cost. It's just, it'd be like trying to have them absorb the cost of the installation of a brand new facility, right? It's just, it's not realistic, and it's detrimental to the users, and it's detrimental to the growth of any of the industry as well. So it's really a state and federal partnership, and right now the feds have the infrastructure money that they specifically are targeting wastewater and regional. Like, we check the top two boxes in that. So we're really hoping that we will be able to get some traction.
see,
on
Nina,
this
we're at a
next round.
disadvantage because everybody says on the nameplate, it's an 8 million gallon per day plant.
Right.
But we're lucky to do 4, just over 4, because
Right.
of all the new add-ons and the treatments that we have to do.
Well, and also because of the restrictions,
Well, that's what I
right?
mean.
The level of discharge restrictions, and that's why we needed to have that capacity study completed. So that helps bolster our application at the federal level, because now you have an independent evaluation that says, it's not just the operator saying, well, I think this is what I'm seeing. We also have that capacity study, the independent study that can bolster that. That's why we needed to get that done.
Anything further?
That's everything I've got so far.
Thank you. We'll now move on the agenda. 13B is correspondence from the Killenly Board of Education. Could you just go over this, Ms. Caloria?
Sure, the Board of Education met on June 26th. They passed motions to utilize some of their unexpended education funds, or the non-lapsing account. So they're, as Kyle had indicated during his liaison report to you, one is for the repairs at the KHS tennis courts, and the other one is for the emergency access road design work for that emergency access road. And so both will be out of their non-lapsing account.
Thank you.
Well, getting back to, now, the non-lapsing account, what is the time frame that comes out of the non-lapsing account? Is it
So
like?
that it comes at, that is because the motion, because it was approved at the Board of Education before June 30th, then the balance of their account is reflected minus those two. So when
Okay,
they,
that's,
yeah.
so once we get the
Yep, it's
audit,
what-
the
it's the
audit comes
authorized-
in
yeah.
January, then they can apply for funds.
They no longer have to do that process. By legislation, the Board of Education is now able to, to designate the funds to go into the non-lapsing account independent of the town council, so they will no longer need to make that request.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so that doesn't come before the town any longer.
Now, Mary, I just have one question about, are they still going to provide us with the information where they're spending, so we actually can inform, you know, we'll see where they're at? Do they still have to give us a report? We have no say, but are they still providing the information is my question. And
I
I'm
honestly
about-
have to look through the actual, I don't have that legislation off the top of my head memorized, so I will have to look through the legislation to see if the legislation requires any reporting to the town side on expenditures, but I can check on that. It, well, wouldn't have to be in their budget because the budget is general fund. It's not the non-lapsing fund. That's a separate fund.
Yeah, that
But-
was my concern. We might not see anything.
I can check
was
on
just
that and find
curious.
out.
Has there any talk about them putting all their information on the website? Like we had of where
I
their
honestly
money
haven't
goes?
had an opportunity to speak with the superintendent about that yet.
I think people would appreciate that. That would be really a good, that would go a long way, especially when you look at their number. When you look at their number, it's so disproportionate because we look at what we're asking for, but it doesn't show the revenue, it doesn't reflect the 29 million. So when the voters looking at that and they look at the size of the educational system budget, I think it gets skewed pretty badly, and I think people would like to see how they're spending it.
When will ours be up and running?
It's already up there.
It's up there now?
It's up,
Yeah.
yep.
Cool.
Yeah, I've looked at it a couple times. And in response to Mr. Gambatisse's comment, when we first started talking about this is something that, back when I was liaison to the BOE, I had made the recommendation to them back then. The thing that was brought up to me was they weren't sure if their software would be compatible because they use different software than the town does. So, but I know they were changing software since then, because that was several years back, so. All right. Anything further on this? Seeing nothing, we'll move on to the agenda. Item 14, unfinished business for town council action. We have none. So we'll now move on to item 15A, consideration and action on a resolution authorizing the salary adjustments for non-union employees and management staff for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. I will entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Catullo, seconded by Ms. George. As Ms. Calorio had stated earlier, this didn't go before Personnel Subcommittee, but she did reach out to myself and Ms. Wakefield as well. We're both on Personnel Subcommittee along with Mr. Whitehead, and I had spoke with Mr. Whitehead as well. And the discussion amongst us was due to the timing of this, so we wouldn't have to worry about, because if we were to bring this to Personnel Subcommittee, then we would run into an issue of having to give them back pay because of the timing of when so it was, that's why this didn't come before Personnel Subcommittee, because of that reason. But as Ms. Calorio stated, and as I said, she did reach out to myself, Tammy, and then I had reached out to Mr. Whitehead, and that was last Tuesday. She talked to us about this. So Personnel Subcommittee didn't convene on this, but the members of Personnel Subcommittee individually did say that we were okay with this coming before the full council. So, Ms. Calorio, if you want to go over this.
Sure, so the request is, so this is for all non-unions, this does not include the town manager, so this is all of the department heads, but I will say the larger group is what I would consider more frontline employees. This is all of our library staff, our WPCA staff, and as well as our law enforcement staff. So we have a pretty large grouping that is non-union. The request is 2.5%. This is essentially a cost of living increase, which really isn't cost of living. Cost of living is substantially higher than 2.5%, but that's the request. This is what we had included within the budget for the contingency value. This is what we had anticipated for union increases, just for information. 2 unions that are in the last and final year of their 3-year contract. They both of those units have 2.25% increases, and the one union that is just beginning their new union contract has a 3.5%. 2.5 is, I think, a reasonable request for our entire union staff, especially given that many of them are kind of more that frontline position. So the total cost of this is approximately $76,000 from contingency. The contingency balance, you'll note, is at $232,000, just over that, and that's because we already did a transfer for the town hall unit That was done in your June meeting, as we ratified that contract. After this, if this were approved, the balance of contingency in the general fund operating budget would be just over $156,000. The WPCA, this would also authorize the transfer for the WPCA as well for their increases. That's $15,000, and they have a contingent account of $40,000, which we did include this $15,000 in building that $40,000 budget, which would leave them with a $25,000 contingent. So that's the request that I have before. That's what I have before you. Actually, I will take that. I didn't realize it. The cost of the transfer on the general fund side is actually $65,000, not $76,000. My apologies. $65,000 because I changed it in the resolution, but forgot to change it on the cover page. My apologies to that. So it's actually the authorization would be $65,000. So we would have just over $165,000 in contingency at the end. So $65,000 comes from contingency for the non-union, and then $15,000 for WPCA.
Thank you. Discussion? Comments?
Explain, oh, I see WPCA, because why wouldn't they be covered under WPCA budget?
They are covered in the WPCA budget, but we included it in the contingency because they are non-union, and with all non-union town employees, that's set by the town council in the upcoming year. So it's just that they're town employees. It's a new process for us, given that we now have town employees over there. I have to constantly remember, you got to do those guys too.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on to the agenda. Next item up is 15B, consideration and action on a resolution authorizing the change of one seasonal parks position to a full-time parks position. In light of the discussion earlier, if anyone would like to, I would entertain a motion to table this until we get further clarification from the town attorney as to where the council has authority to do this. If it does come down to the council doesn't, if the charter or the ordinances don't give the town council the authority to do this process this way, and then the town manager would want to make a recommendation through the normal channels, through personnel subcommittee, through a fiscal subcommittee, whatever is required at that point, I would be fine with that as well.
I'll make that motion.
Motion has been made by Mr. Grandelski. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Cottula. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye of tabling this, as I said, until we consult with the attorney. Everyone who's in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Two opposed. Abstentions? Motion carries. So we'll now move on to the agenda. Next item up is item 16, council member reports and comments. Mr. Grandelski, would you like to
I have nothing to
start?
report. I was on vacation, and then I hurt my leg, and I missed a couple other meetings, so I didn't attend any.
Mr. Gambatista.
I had, we barely had a quorum. It was late, about 7:15, and it was a short meeting, but Agricultural Commission, not a lot going on, but I did want to share that they did a mushroom class in June at the library, and they had 60 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was free, and they've got a lot. They've had a lot of people reach out asking to do more, and they're looking to do beekeeping again and try to bring that back. So it was a pretty short meeting because we barely had a quorum. But I thought that was pretty interesting, and there was a ton of people that showed up. It was right. I think they did it at 10 o'clock, so people came in for the farmers market, went over, and it was hugely successful. So that was. It was a bright light.
Good to hear. Ms. Murphy?
I had the wastewater, and we've talked about most of that. It was mostly about the letters. And then I had the school, the BOE. They have retired the Red Men mascot. They voted to do that. And they voted to continue working on the 10-4B, but UCR, is that it? Or CHR? CHR. Those letters always get me. CHR had applied for funding for a full-time counselor in the high school, and KHS, KIS, and then a part-time at KMS. I hate those initials. And they didn't get the funding. So now the concerned citizens who had been saying, Feinstein had been saying, oh, we're going to come to a good settlement. We feel good about this. Now he doesn't feel so good and says it might go on longer. So that's where we are with that.
Just one quick question. The funding, that was grant funding they were going for, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Cottula?
Open Space Land and Acquisition didn't have enough members there for a quorum. We had a walkthrough of both KMS for the project and the Westfield Avenue building. And that's all progressing. The Westfield Avenue is going to start going along pretty quick here, I believe, this summer. They've already got one of the exterior wall sections down to start rebuilding that where it's coming apart. A lot of work going on.
Do you know when the next walkthroughs are?
They do them before every
Every
meeting,
meeting.
is when they do their walkthroughs. They do them at 6 o'clock, so it'll be when they have their next meeting.
Yeah,
So-
because we had a meeting a week before our regularly scheduled meeting, so I think Mary had said we might have a non-scheduled meeting for some,
You see, guys seem to
items.
like special meetings for whatever reason on that, with that group.
I just show up, I don't pick the time.
No, I know. No, I know.
Anything more? Nope. Thank you.
But I can let everyone know when the next walkthrough is, so that way, because I know Kevin gets the meeting notice, but you may not all see that added to the calendar, so I'll try and make sure that we make a note to let you all know when the next walkthroughs are, because
I did one of the walkthroughs back, I think, March or April and whenever, and it's pretty, knowing what it looked like when my kids were there and what it looks like now is a completely different animal.
we got to go demolish a building, right, Tammy?
We did.
That was fun.
If Kevin's all done, I can.
I'm all done. Yeah,
Okay.
that's all right.
Yes, so Mary, the superintendent, the principal, and I, and the Board of Ed had representatives there that could have gotten in the excavator and tried to knock down the last modular there, but nobody but Mary, the superintendent, principal, and I got in the excavator and.
I was excited. I got the first whack at it. It was great. I took
I-
one hit
and I-
and had to
and
do
I-
it again.
And I got to take the air conditioner unit off the roof, and so, yeah. So it was nice. And I told them point blank, I said, that was really fun. I said, if you ever do take down KCS, I said, I'm all in, because that's my alma mater. So I'll be more than happy to knock down the building that I spent 6 long years in. But in addition to that, I did do the walk. We did put out our little bugs. And if you look at the picture on the second page in town manager's report, you can see all these little black, it's not the copy, it's not a copy problem. That's the little black dots on the straw are the actual beetles. And so they're just kind of crawling around. The kids were excited. It was like we're creating the next generation of Donna Bronwell. A whole generation of kids that just love bugs and love nature and keeping everything preserved and healthy. They were just running up and down, all excited, looking for infested trees so they could fix them. So it was early enough in the day, but it got hot fast. So it's nice to know that Cat Hollow is actually being used. There was a lot of people coming in and out, walking it while we were still putting stuff on the trees. Parks and Rec didn't have their usual meeting in May because of different things and the budget and all that other stuff. I did go and stop because I know the red, white, and blue was if you didn't get a chance. The finale on the fireworks was awesome. It was probably the best one I've seen in I can't tell you how long. But Parks and Rec, I asked for their summer programming. There are 90 participants in their summer camp program. The summer concert series started last Wednesday. Patty and I went to that. It was awesome. It was red light and the Jeeps, and it was a great time. So this Thursday is another one, and then the 18th and the 25th, they're all in Davis Park. They start, I believe, 6 or 7? 6 to 8. It's really, and yeah, it's really, the concerts are nice. They're nice music, a nice variety of music. Community Drumming Circle is actually this Saturday night from 7 to 9 in Davis Park. They're also going to be doing it in August 10th and September 14th. This Saturday, not only is it second Saturday, which is like 10 to 4, 12 to 4, 12 to 4. And then the drumming circle is going to be at Davis Park. While in case you don't want to be outside, they had ballroom dancing and was an offered through the rec department. They're actually having their ballroom dancing showcase recital for everybody that took the class. They're going to be putting on a demonstration at the community center on Broad Street, 7 p.m. You know, people are invited to come out and, you know, and check it out. I believe that it like filled up really fast. So hopefully they'll be able to do another one. In case that wasn't enough going on, starting Thursdays, the Killenly River Trail, they actually have a fun run series that starts that started July 1. It's going for 6 weeks. There's over 30 participants in that. The sports camps are like exploding full. Volleyball has over 40 participants. The football program has over 60 kids coming out for that. Golf has 9 signed up. Field hockey is still in the process of signing up. That's not to the end of July, so they're expecting that. They also have music camps set up for guitar and violin. There are 3 bus trips over the summer. July 18th trip to the New London Cross Sound cruise. That bus trip is full. The August 15th to Wickford, Rhode Island is still open, and there will be taking a bus up on September 24th to the Big E to spend the day. They drive you up there. You don't have to drive. You don't have to park. You don't have to deal with that. You just get on the bus, go up, spend your time, leave, and come back. Their exercise classes are all full. The senior picnic is going to be September the 16th. July the 20th is the Run for Ryan at Owen Bell Park. And of course, every Wednesday, Senior Movies, which has over 50 people on a weekly basis. The movies start 1:30 in the afternoon, and and when I asked Parks and Rec, I said, "Are these all just Killenly, or are these, But there's a lot of people come from out of town, bringing their money and spending it in Killenly, which is really super excited. Just to kind of keep you in the loop, they're looking to maybe add a little extra to the Spooktacular, which was in October. And the next play at the Little Theater is Descendants in October. And I also went to the Steel Magnolia presentation at the Little Theater, I think a couple weeks ago. Yeah, the couple weeks ago, near the end of June, and it was incredible. I actually cried. I will admit to it. It actually moved me to tears, and one of the people that was actually in one of the primary roles, she'd never acted before on stage, and it was just really empowering. It was a tough script, but they pulled it off, and it was great. And so if you get a chance to get out to any of the stuff with Parks and Rec, we got a lot of stuff going on. It's a great resource we have in Killingly.
Thank you. Inland Wetlands Watercourse was canceled, so I had nothing.
Economic development was canceled, so I have nothing.
Ms. Barclay.
Housing Authority meeting was canceled. Planning and zoning meeting, the workshop was held at 6 o'clock. We're still working on the definition of planned residential development, trying to keep the densities down. We had a question of how rural got into planned residential development. Keith Thurlow went back and he found that it was added in 2017 when the owner of Westview Nursing Home asked that planned residential development be rewritten. So he had a lot of input to the increases in density, and it was for his own self-interest. That one person had all that input into planned residential development. And when the planned residential development is rewritten, it will be advertised, there will be a public hearing. Changes can be requested in the regulations by the public, but the planning and zoning is the ultimate determination, and the regulations are fluid, so you can make requests at any time. And there was a public hearing for 82 Putnam Pike, which is right across from the town garage, for a 40 by 63 bay metal garage. It'll be tied into the sewer. Very little water usage. It's just for the storage of equipment. So that was approved, and that was it.
Thank you. Actually, I did have one other thing. I attended the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. There were two items that came up. One of them regarding property on Blueville Road where he wanted to build a garage, wanted to purchase land from the town, was unable to redesign a garage, and he's applying for an easement. Other one was for someone who was looking to put up, I believe it was a Quonset hut, and where the property line is because of how close his house is to the property line and where his driveway is. It actually already was already over where it should be, and then he was applying for an easement on that as well. Or excuse me, a variance, not an easement. And that's all I had. So moving on in the agenda, next item up is executive session. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session with the town council, the town manager, and the finance director for items 17A, B, and C, which are potential sale of property and potential acquisition of properties.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made by Mr. Catula, seconded by Mr. Grandelski. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We are going into executive session, and it is currently 9:19 PM.